I had a group of like 6 friends here in San Diego where I live. This was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And we were all signed up for an improv class together as a crew. And then we were going to do an improv show as like at like an open mic night or something. And instead everyone got married and had kids and moved away. But we were like really close.
That's like that, you know, isn't that the story of Hollywood in a nutshell,
Totally.
isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, for real. Hey, it's the Data-Driven Marketer, sponsored by NetWise. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
And apparently I'm Robert.
Welcome back for another hang in the data basement. Thanks for joining us. And special thanks to our guest this week, Robert Rose, who is the founder and chief troublemaker at the Content Marketing Institute. Or is there the on there, or did I just insert that?
There is a the. There, yeah, it does have an article.
Perfect.
It does indeed.
Sweet. We actually had a guest on one of our other podcasts where I messed up the intro in exactly that way, where they were like, there's no the, thank you. I was like, oh no, what
There's
have I done?
no the.
Rough start.
But yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, at this point, I'll kind of throw to you for a quick intro of, you know, who you are, where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. First of all, I mean, what a fun thing. I love the data basement. So I'm a sucker for a good pun. I am currently the chief strategy. I mean, my official title is chief strategy advisor with Content Marketing Institute. And then I have my own firm called the Content Advisory, but ostensibly I do the same thing, which is I used to say I run around the planet and work with brands to help them sort out the operation and strategy of their content and content marketing. But I don't do a lot of running around the planet these days. I do a lot of 16:9 videos from the confines of my office. But the work is the same, which is I spend my time working with these companies, really helping them sort out their content marketing and their content strategy, which is where I've spent the last 10 years of my career, really working with the Content Marketing Institute as chief strategy advisor, and working with my pal Joe Polizzi on books and the podcasts that we have, and a lot of consulting along the way.
I think by the time that this goes live, Joe's episode with us will have aired. And so I can promise that this time we won't descend into a rabbit hole conversation about social tokens and the future of content ownership. And
no. This conversation will be infinitely more intelligent, I'm sure, than the one you had with Joe, and certainly funnier.
So
That's great.
So I'll let the listener be the judge of that. There you go. That's the right response. Yeah. So you were our first, I would say, what's the term I'm looking for? I don't want to say contentious guest, but our first, you know, possible hostile witness. On our Calendly forum, you under the topic you wanted to discuss, you said you wanted to take issue with the title of our podcast.
Well, you know, so here we go.
Start.
Right? I mean, you know, I like the idea of first contentious witness. That's a good role for me anyway. But no, I mean, you know, tongue firmly in cheek here. The idea of data driven, and I'm sure this is something your listeners and you guys are well aware of, that, you know, as I probably too cutely say, I don't think anyone should be data driven. I think data should ride shotgun, right? I think the wisdom that we can bring to bear is too important for us to rely solely on. You know, one of the things that I see so often as a pothole that marketers and marketing teams fall into is that the amount of data analytics and information that can be gleaned from different systems is so high, and the questions are so poor that even though the information is accurate, and, you know, whether it's a data basement, a data lake, a data pool, or a data puddle, we're just making very poor decisions by, you know, basically guiding marketing strategy over what the technology is telling us to do. And I know that's not what data driven really means. I totally get it. And so having a little fun with it, I would just say that the real goal here is to be informed as well as you can by data sitting shotgun with you, looking at the map and helping guide you to a destination that you as the driver have decided that you need to go, which of course are your business goals and all the things you're trying to accomplish. So I don't know if that's contentious witness or, if I'm ready for the prosecution or not, but that's my story.
You said a lot of things I like there, especially data puddle. I've never heard that before.
Data puddle,
I'm going to use that one a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality that you presaged already is we for sure agree with you, right? I think when it comes to the idea of data-driven marketing, we're constantly preaching the extent to which it's very much a with great power comes great responsibility sort of thing.
Ooh, first Spider-Man reference. Here we go.
There is that much data, but if you don't use it right, you're just going to end up making stupid data-driven decisions. Like the existence of the data doesn't immediately mean that you're making proper scientific decisions. And the irony is a scientist would know that, because if your tests aren't built the right way, just you're not even doing science right. So the idea of, we ramped up analytics and we've got our data lake going and we're looking at all this stuff and here's the signal that we've got. It doesn't matter if you haven't built the right tests, if you're not thinking of it with the right sort of methodology, which is really how we got to the idea of like, okay, let's do a podcast where we try to talk about this, because we bumped into so many people that are like, here's our analytics. And we're like, yeah, but you're kind of looking at the wrong thing to support what you just told me is the decision out the other side. So
it's one of those things where we often see, as I have said to clients before, show me your Google Analytics and I'll tell you any story you'd like me to tell you. More time on site. Of course, they're interested in your content. It's not that they can't find what they're looking for and ultimately give up. More visits. Of course, those are relevant visits. It's not just you've randomly, ranked for some Google search that's completely irrelevant to your business, but happens to draw in a lot of job seekers. Of course, that's all relevant, wonderful A-list sweet spot visitors that you're getting. Right. You can, and in many cases, executive leadership in businesses have gotten so wrapped around the axle of making sure that every graph is going up and to the right, we will weirdly compete against ourselves to make sure that all those lines are going up and to the right, and not understand that it's okay for sometimes the traffic to go down. It's okay for unsubscribe rates to go up for a minute. There are things that we can make the business decisions about that mean decreases in numbers. It's, every number going up is not always a good thing.
Right. I often say, I can get you followers. They just might not be people.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I used to tell my boss when I was the CMO of a software company, I would tell my board, you want leads? I'll pour leads over this place. I'll give you all kinds of leads. I'll go out there and create content that say 50% discount and get free food, steaks for free, anything you want. I'll get you clicks and visits and leads, and no problem. Oh, you want them to be good leads? Oh, I'm sorry. That's a different question. And so it's it is a game that we play. And the challenge doesn't come when we're sort of siloed off on our own. The challenge comes is when we are, I've literally watched business teams compete with each other for traffic because that's how they're KPI'd, right? In other words, the blog team is measured on visits. The web team is measured on visits. And so therefore, the blog team goes to the web team and says, hey, may we have a link on the front page of the website to the blog? And the web team says, no, sorry. I get measured on visits. You get measured on visits. If I siphon my visitors off to you, I'm going to lose my bonus.
Totally.
And they're right. That's the crazy part. They're right. So we have to ask really good questions of the data before we start getting meaningful answers.
Yeah, this is a spot where I think we overlap a lot with, and this is a common topic that comes up here, is how much like actual science, like math-based science and engineering mindset is coming to the marketing space to do this stuff, right? Because I run technology for our company. I'm our CTO, so I've built a lot of our software over the years that processes our data and builds our platforms and stuff. And we go through that same kind of phase with our product where we'll be building numbers will be going up, we're getting more information in the system, but then we'll make some big upgrades, and part of the upgrade is numbers will drop for a little bit. It's like, wait, what broke? What happened? We can't tell our customers that like we have less information than we used to have, but it's the same process. It's identifying ways to improve something by making raw numbers lower. What is the interesting thing here with marketing is, as I've started to really wrap my head around how to build and grow a great team that is data driven, but is also doing it well, is there's a lot of iteration. It's really, really hard to get to numbers that are useful and to not have to constantly be changing the numbers that you're referencing, which then means the time period that you're looking over to make decisions now changes, and old data is not useful anymore because you've changed your metrics. And there's so much iteration. How does a team deal with that? How do you move forward when you really can't control the experiments, right? These are very organic. It's almost like biological, like population studies in scientific groups, right? It's hard. It's really complicated.
Yeah. This is going to be a bit of a glib answer to your very, very deep question, because it is a hard thing to figure out. But so my glib answer is, to me, measurement architecture or architecting a measurement program is a design problem, not an engineering problem. And businesses often look at it as an engineering problem. In other words, they look at the finished result and then they sort of, reverse engineer how to get there, right? Mm-hmm. And so they let the data tell them what they should think. And so, in other words, looking at it as a design problem, we start asking hypothetical questions or making hypotheses, and then we start to say, well, what would be our definition of success if we were able to glean it? And now we can start to design success statements around that. I'm a big believer in OKRs. I like that as a framework. I think, and for maybe for your audience that doesn't know what OKRs are, they're objectives and key results. It's a measurement, sort of methodology, if you will. Andy Grove from Intel is the one who really, sort of championed it. And then it became big at Google and Microsoft and other tech companies. But to me, it's a great way of, because the thing that's missing, we have so much analytics tools. The thing that's missing is a shared definition of success, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, my vision of what engagement means, or what a visit means, or what a video view means, or what a conversion means could be very different than what the sales team or the VP of sales or the CEO's vision of that is. And so we have to start to say, let's get a shared objective, a goal that we're trying to reach, and then what are the measurement attributes, the unambiguous, unassailable definitions of what success would look like. Now let's go measure it. And if we have 1, 2, 3, or 5 of those that sort of define what success in this objective means, well, now we're starting to design something that makes sense. Now we're starting to design something that has a shared context. By the way, whether or not it's accurate, right? Because we don't know. It may turn out that it wasn't that way, but at least we all have a shared sense of the journey, the shared destination that we're trying to get to.
Well, it's funny because part of what you're saying is a thing that I tend to be on the one on our team that brings up frequently, which is you can even understand your end result, and then you have to go back to designing tests to try to understand how you got that result, even if you do get it, because you can also come up with your idea of the end result, let's call it more leads, and then do a bunch of stuff and have no idea what worked. And then you can't proceed strategically past that. And you end up almost in this sort of locked up state of like, well, we're afraid to turn anything off, even though we're bleeding money into the advertising vacuum. Because we don't know which is the thing that worked to actually drive that result. And it's about testing design often. And, sometimes within a team, you'll have the department that cares about revenue is there going, look, we just need leads, get them however you want. And it's like, well, we need to take a minute and make sure we do it the right way, or else we're not going to know where those leads came from. And then I'm just going to keep having to ask for the same ridiculous budget every month instead of being able to optimize for, better leads or sort of whatever.
Yeah, Robert, can you give an example of how you would approach setting this up? Like what's a good example of something that a common mid-level marketing team would run into, setting up their goals and their OKRs, and how would you suggest they approach that?
Yeah, I can actually, and there's we were just talking about a great example of this, right? Which is the idea of, okay, we're trying to get more leads, right? That's not that in itself is not a well-designed objective, right? More leads is not, because more leads with what? More leads at, okay, you want more leads? Can I spend as much money as I would like? Does it matter how I get there, right? It does, of course, it does matter. And designing those testing, objectives are also a huge part of this. But just to answer your question, one of the things that I like to do is construct an objective to say, with the consciousness of saying we're trying to do so profitably. In other words, if I say more leads, great, but that's just value. There's no cost there. So restate that metric for me, or restate that objective so that I can do it profitably. So maybe it's, I want more leads at the same cost per lead or less, maybe, right? So if our standard is $50 per lead, I want more leads in the next quarter at the same cost per lead or less. Great. That's an objective I can get my head around, because now what I can start to do is to say, what are the key results that I need to meet that objective? Well, one, I can get there through delivery of more leads to the landing page, just making this up, right? But two, I can also get that goal, that objective met if I convert more of the leads that I'm getting there. Mm-hmm. So there's two key results right there. So increase my conversion rate on the landing pages I have, or two, just dump more qualified leads on top. Now, one of those two things is likely to be better for me in the long run, and I can start to gauge that. But third might be lower my cost per thousand on advertising by, $15 or something, because I want to spend more money driving more leads to this landing page, and I want to spend more money on the landing page to drive more conversions. Therefore, I need to decrease my cost somewhere else. So my third key result in that OKR design might literally be decrease my ad spend. And so if I decrease my ad spend plus increase my conversion plus dumping more leads on, now I'm designing something that's really going to be a shared success for that objective, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm doing all good things that ultimately, one of them may be wrong, one of them may be better, one of them may be worse, but now I'll start to understand contextually where I want to start to lean in on my efforts.
Mm-hmm. I think the interesting thing you said a couple of times there, right, in terms of shared success, again, sort of relates to a note that I wrote while you were saying something earlier, that, data can either unite or divide. And I think on this podcast, we frequently talk about kind of the utopian case where getting everybody rallied around understanding the data in the right way and the like you said, the OKRs can create a to use one of my least favorite corporate buzzwords, synergy between the departments where everybody's pushing toward the same thing. At the same time, it's almost like playing with fire, because if you don't understand if you don't have the same understanding of the same stuff, then you can of the same data, then you can have the conflict that you talked about before, where you literally have two internal departments that are pushing against the same metric.
It's such a great point. I mean, it's such a great point. I had this the other day. I had a client literally say to me, the VP of marketing, ostensibly the CMO, because they didn't have a CMO, a smaller technology firm. So the VP of marketing there, who is the head of marketing, was saying to the directors and the managers, we create too much content. Just, their observation. We create too much content. And so the directive is reduce the amount of content we're creating. And so nobody can understand what that means. And so we're having a big meeting about it, and we're talking about it. And I said, you don't know that you can't know the answer to that question because you're not measuring the efficacy of the content you're creating. So quite frankly, you may not be producing enough content. And it's like that scene from Amadeus, when he finishes playing the thing and the emperor comes up and says, I really liked it, except there was too many notes. And Amadeus goes, well, just tell me which ones to take out and I'll take them out. It's literally, you don't know the answer to that question. And so it's silly to even disagree about it until you can actually go and measure the basis of the thing that you're trying to measure. So it's such a great point that you've got to have that. You've got to have a shared understanding of what those things are. Imagine playing football with two teams who disagreed over how long a yard is.
Right. That's a first down. No, it's not.
Yeah. No, it's not. That's not a first down. It's 8 yards for a first down. Wait a minute.
We're playing metric football.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I literally wrote down what is too much content, because it's not a helpful. I don't know. It makes me think of a thing I had somebody explain to me in an acting class once, which I was in because I wanted to be a director. And they said, my worst experience on set was with a director who came up once and said, okay, do that again, but be more funny. And he's like, and that's a perfect example of useless direction. Because what?
Yeah,
okay,
right.
Does that mean slip on a banana peel or goofy your voice?
Yeah, right. Do it in a silly voice. Yeah.
So I think maybe it's a good segue actually to what really we had talked about as the main topic to discuss so far, but we're 20 minutes in and we just ended up jamming on the name of the podcast. Content strategy and content marketing, ultimately. Yeah, I think maybe an interesting place to start that we've ended up using repetitively with a lot of our sort of content marketing expert guests is, what's your just definition of content marketing or content strategy, I guess?
Yeah. Well, and they're two different things for sure. But coming together, and we can certainly get to that if you'd like to, of why I think they are coming together. But they are different. So content marketing, I mean, look, at Content Marketing Institute, we offer all sorts of sort of, very business dictionary definitions of such things, and so it has words, I'm sure synergy comes in there somewhere, your favorite word. But ultimately it is, we now have, as brands, as product companies, as service companies, we now have the ability to directly reach and provide value to audiences and develop content that delivers that value, whether it's education, inspiration, how-tos, entertainment, whatever it is. The content is valuable in its own right, separate and discrete from our brand or our product or service. And we do that in order to drive some profitable action from a customer base that we want to engage. And it's about that simple, right? It's just literally delivery of valuable content that is discrete and separate from our brand or our product or our service for the purpose of affecting the behavior of that audience in a way that benefits our company. And that's content marketing in a nutshell. And so, I mean, there are lots of tighter definitions, but the reason I like to explain it that way is because it just separates it out from marketing content, which I don't think is going away. Love marketing content. I'm a student of advertising, love value propositions, love features, benefits, reasons to believe, all of those things, dig it. And it's different. It's just different, right? And so if I can take my logo off of the content and it delivers value in the same way that it does with my competitor's logo or with no logo, then I know that I'm meeting the objective of content marketing. Is it's valuable. The content is valuable.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard it that way, and I love it because it's the way that I tend to think, and sometimes find myself needing to defend within even the marketing department. But yeah, the idea that the content that can be valuable on its own, and I think sometimes inside of a team or higher up the ladder, you'll get people that don't necessarily understand that, and they have this sometimes awkward response that's like, well, wait a minute, we could monetize that by itself. And so now I'm having all these other thoughts about how we should do things differently. And it's like, no, that's kind of the point. You got to give up a little. That is
exactly the point. Yeah, exactly right.
To get people to care.
So, right.
I find the confusion
that's exactly it.
Often happens as soon as you're trying to sell things. As soon as you're trying to do the selling steps with your marketing, which sounds silly because like marketing's to help you sell things, but you're not necessarily doing the selling with content marketing, right? You're intriguing, you're educating, like you said, you're promoting behaviors, you're building relationships, right? But the sell step, which like comes later down funnel, that becomes more and more strictly designed, interferes with that, right? It's like, hey, this great piece of content that's really educational and we're getting tons of people visiting. Why don't we just add a bunch of ads to it that drive people to the sign up page or put pricing on that page? It's like, wait. that's not what the users, that's not the flow the user's going through, right? That's not their experience. I think that's a pretty,
right.
I'm curious of your thoughts on this. Feels like something that's, this concept has always existed. There's always been the idea of user behavior and what is someone doing in the moment that they're exposed to your brand and to your marketing. But I feel like that concept is just more and more robust and important these days because less time is invested in individual things, right? We hop between stuff faster and your brain switching from like work to consumer and entertainment to professional. And so like that, seeing something out of context or being given something that you really didn't want in that moment, even if you wanted it some other moment, is just so much more jarring these days.
Yeah, it's in a very simple sense, content marketing, the marketing content is describing the value of our products and services and brand. Content marketing is creating value despite our product or our brand. And, and there are business reasons to do both. I'm never one to recommend or prescribe that a business go all in one way or another. And in fact, we often describe content marketing as a multiplier, right? It is a multiplier of value for the marketing content you're creating. Because if you can create that trust and value and engagement with an audience member before they experience your marketing content, they're only going to trust your marketing content that much more. Right. So if I, and the example I always use, it's a great one in the technology business, of course, is HubSpot and inbound marketing, right? Inbound marketing didn't exist before they invented it, right? You can go back and look at the Google search trends and you can see 2007, 2008, HubSpot basically came out with inbound marketing and there was nothing going on with inbound marketing. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there. We were all creating content for search and we were doing marketing automation and we were using email and we were doing inbound marketing. They just wrapped it up into a beautiful package, into thought leadership, called it a methodology, named it inbound marketing, wrote a book, delivered value, showed you how to do it, and made a gajillion dollars off of that by creating that value in that content brand. And that's the perfect example of that, is if you can invent an entire category of marketing that quite frankly existed well before it did, and they just were very clever in the way that they put it all together. Now you're talking about something, right? Now you're actually really delivering value and differentiation.
Well, I think the thing that can be hard there is that you have to wait for that multiplier sometimes. And so one of the other differentiations between content marketing and marketing content, and then you could chase that even further, right? Just lead gen or whatever you want to call it, is, it is a multiplier, but it's not going to pay off until the machine has been running for a little while, which is not always what the people looking for the results at the end of the funnel want to hear. I have found, at least.
Well, exactly. Right. I mean, it's the difference, so many businesses call what they do in marketing demand generation, but that's not, of course, it's just demand identification. It's peppering enough advertisements and marketing content out into the wilderness to, basically scream into an auditorium, hey, anybody here need my stuff? And a few hands go up. Now you have identified demand, right? You've identified demand for that thing. Content marketing is different, where you're walking into the auditorium of people who know nothing about what it is you do. And so you educate them on the idea, and you get everybody all excited about that idea, which takes longer and it takes a bit of time, and you've got to warm them up and educate them and inspire them. But then when you walk in and go, and who needs this stuff? Way more hands go up. It's true generation of demand.
So how does a company that's either getting started with a new product, or just a small company getting off the ground, or a company that has been running a team and marketing and branding for a while, how do they strike the right balance as you're getting up and running with this, right? Because you've got the demand of, I need to bring in leads, right, for a company. I need to be driving the sales team. I need to be supporting sales team making sales. But I also really do have to take a 6-month, year-long, multi-year approach to building brand trust and building information out there, and getting just the simple fact of like getting content indexed and getting it shared places, right? There's all of this takes time. So what's the right balance, knowing that there's not necessarily one answer? But
yeah, there isn't one. I mean, but you said the magic word there, which is balance, right? And remember, balance doesn't mean equal. Balance means what's the right balance for us today in terms of, what our needs are, where we want to weight things. In other words, the way I look at marketing, the marketing mix, classic marketing mix going back to university, right? Which is, where are we spending our money? Fun fact, the marketing mix actually came from, the author who made that term, and I'm blanking on his name just at the moment, but was talking about marketers being like bartenders, and said their goal is to mix very tasty cocktails. And so the idea is, what does our marketing mix look like? I think of it like an investment portfolio. And so your marketing content, your ads, your SEO, search buys, those are all day trading things. Those are all short-term investments that we're trying to get returns on, where we execute a lot of small, short-term investments to identify demand and find those early hand raisers, so that, we keep the lights on. We have to keep the lights on to make sure that we can pay the rent, so that we can afford to do some level of long-term value investing, right? Invest in the home, invest in solar panels for our home, invest in the kinds of things that are going to take a year or 2 years to actually come to fruition. But when they do, they actually, can provide for a lot of exponential benefits. And finding that balance for an early startup is hard. I totally get it. I've been in those Friday afternoon uncomfortable board meetings when they're saying, how many leads did you generate this week? And so maintaining some level of investment and all that is a focus on, where do you want to balance your portfolio short-term versus long-term? That's what I find anyway. And it's different for everybody.
Totally. I like the comparison to investments, right? Because that really touches on like the psychological approach, different people's sense of risk, which is totally part of marketing too, right? There's a lot of parallels there with investment dollars, and you gotta spend money to understand what's going to work. Sometimes
and
too,
understanding your target audience, and understanding the your total addressable market, and finding out how quickly you're going to run through that, and how realistic it is given the competition in the market space, and all. The thing that I love, not to continue to bring HubSpot into this or anything, but what I love about that example is, they kind of went they certainly did other things. They certainly, in terms of the other marketing activities they were doing, paid media and, advertising and webinars and all the active things that they were doing. But interestingly, I think one of the reasons they kind of went all in on this inbound idea was because there was so much competition in the space that they were in. They needed to create a space in where there was much fewer competitors. And so by sort of carving out this unique space like they did, they sort of, they not to put it too fine a point on it, they put baby in a corner, right? I mean, they said, look, let's go, here's all the competitors we can sort of put against the wall. There's nobody else like us. And so for them, it was a huge component of their marketing investment, whereas somebody else, it may not be, that are generating leads regularly and, can put butts in seats. For them, it might be a very small level of investment just for brand or just for loyalty or just for some other business purpose.
The funny thing is that HubSpot example has probably been used industry-wide to justify bad decisions since that worked, right? The number of times that I've heard somebody say, well, you need to define a new vertical, own a new vertical. And it's sort of like, I mean, sometimes, but
yeah, of course.
Always
absolutely.
Be the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Those, right. Especially in technology startups. I totally get that. Right. I mean, it used to be before HubSpot, by the way, when I was doing the whole startup thing, it was all about Salesforce, right? And the idea was you needed to define a category like Salesforce did and become coin operated. Coin operated. Is everybody coin operated? Are we coin operated yet? It's like, oh my God, give me a break.
You don't understand what an inviting segue that would be to talking about social tokens and all the stuff we promised we wouldn't talk about.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it.
So.
You thought I was a contentious, witness before. Wait till you get into that topic.
Well, so we're almost out of time here, but I think maybe a place to wrap up is actually one of the points you threw out in terms of talking about, which it feels to me like a good place to wrap up everything we were talking about with content, because it actually kind of pushes the other direction, which, I'll let you mostly make the point because you told us earlier, so I get to steal the one-liner. But ultimately, before we started recording, you were talking about how content strategy is basically 90% not actually about content. So,
right.
Just setting up a machine that churns out content doesn't mean does not a content strategy make, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. It's, it's definitely, I say it and it's bumper sticker advice. I totally admit it, but the point of it is that one of the things that has happened, and this gets to the point of, we were talking earlier about content marketing and content strategy meeting. One of the trends that we see coming out of the last year and a half of weirdness is businesses are, in some way invested in content marketing. In our research, 90% of businesses we talk to are doing something, right? Maybe they're doing it horribly, but they're doing something. And what we see, this trend that we see, is that they had built teams that says, okay, we need to think about content structure, process, technology, digital asset management, content management systems, taxonomies, translation, localization, the plumbing of content. And then we also need to think about this journalistic, branded content marketing, creating thought leadership, creating a resource center. And they had built sort of teams to do that. Well, what we're finding is that those teams increasingly are merging together to become one, hopefully, function in the business called content. We just see that as sort of a top-level trend. Interestingly, what I find in there is that when we start to create that operation, when a business starts to look at that operation, the immediate thing, and they even call it this in so many instances, we want to build a content factory, right? We want to build something where we can churn out as many assets as we possibly can on demand from the rest of the business. And we become this content vending machine where the team becomes sort of, funny enough, coin operated, where sales or somebody puts in a coin and out comes an asset. And when content strategy starts to get really functional, really measurable, and really scalable is when you realize that it's all just about coordinated communication. It's just about how can we align how the business is communicating in a way that is coordinated and consistent and scalable. And most of that means better communications internally. Most of it means better technology to facilitate that communication internally. And so as we put together content strategies, it is literally 5 or 10% of the time that we're thinking like, all right, now what kind of content are we creating? Like what's the cool story we want to tell? It's very little of that. It's mostly like, how do we get that, like you were talking about earlier, the shared purpose, right? The shared idea, the shared goals, getting that internally aligned across a larger business, especially, that's the biggest problem and the biggest challenge that we see.
People can't see it on the video, but I'm grinning sort of at Brian like an idiot, just because I was brought in largely to help with our marketing stuff. And the first thing I did was, like you said, building a machine. But then immediately people are sort of like, how come that machine is not spitting out all of the answers that I wanted immediately? And I was kind of like, well, because now we have to go figure out the part where I need to talk to all of you to understand what the content actually needs to be to represent our offering and our purpose and things like that. And, people from sales are literally sitting there going, where's the white paper I was expecting to, pop out the other side of this machine as soon as you set it up? It's kind of like, that's not really what it's
always
about.
interesting.
That's exactly what you're talking about. So
it's been super interesting to me seeing how much time it truly takes to work with the business as a whole and all the stakeholders, and all more so than just stakeholders, like the people who really have input that can drive the content, right? Especially, we're not a huge company, so there are a handful of people that I go to get the real juice out of the content marketing that we're in, the marketing content, both, I guess, that we're trying to put together, right? And it's amazingly time consuming to make really quality content that also, and this is the key, that also is driven by your customers and your market, and like who the sales team is talking to and what you're hearing in market and feedback you're getting through your systems. And it's so much to coordinate. And you really got me. I was grinning too. The idea of coordinating internal communication to really produce your external communication really is the bulk of the work. It's not writing even a white paper, and people think white papers are like pages and pages of text, but like compiling that and designing that and making sure it's useful content is most of the work.
The research is
to bring it. To bring it full circle, I used to tell this all the time when I was, I originally came out to Los Angeles and I was going to be a rock star, and then I was going to be a writer. And what I tell people now who want to do that same thing is I say, remember, the job of being a rock star and the job of being a writer is not writing or playing music. The job is a marketing job. The job is a sales job. The job is a networking job. The job is a truck driver job. The job is it's transportation coordination. It's management. It's business. I said, the writing and the music playing, that's a very small piece of the reward of what you get to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Anthony Hopkins maybe is the one who once said that he does the acting for free. They pay him to wait around in a trailer in between.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Although obviously we could keep going forever, so we'll have to have you back on. Before we wrap up, where can people find you?
You're very kind. My little hovel on the web is contentadvisory.net. As I like to say, the dad genes of domains, but we could get it. So that's why we got it. So contentadvisory.net is where you'll find the writing, the consulting, and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I'm on all the social channels except for Clubhouse, because I think Clubhouse is stupid.
Yeah, Clubhouse is a feature, not a product.
That's right. Exactly.
That's how I usually say it.
That is exactly right.
Awesome. Well,
could not have said it better myself.
Thanks everybody for listening, and thank you, Robert, for joining us. This has been another episode of The Data-Driven Marketer. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
I'm Robert.
Take it easy, everybody.